Now, Orlene has asked me to talk especially to the young people here today about what's going on in the colleges. We have our new project called Teen Eagles, and presumably one of these days they're going to be moving along to college, and they need to be prepared for battle when they go. My credentials for talking about this subject are not only the 3 degrees that Orlene mentioned, but the fact that I've paid for 40 years of graduate and undergraduate education for my 6 children, and I've spoken on over 500 college campuses over the last 20 years. That's more than any other conservative speaker. Of course, not more than the left-wingers, not more than Farrakhan or Jesse Jackson or Maya Angelou or any of those left-wingers, but more than any conservative. Surely I've been in more debates on college campuses than anybody right or left. When the leftists come, they get the whole platform. Then every now and then, every few years, somebody thinks we should have a little tokenism, and then they decide to have a debate, and I get invited. Based on my visits, I think there are a lot of things you need to know. Most parents haven't a clue as to what is going on the college campuses. Fortunately, David Horowitz has joined the battle of dealing with the college campuses, and he hired the Luntz polling company to do a survey of the opinions of the liberal arts and social science faculty at Ivy League colleges and universities. And it made big news when it came out, and I'll remind you of it now. Only 3% of these faculty members identified themselves as Republican, while 57% admitted they are Democrats. The rest didn't admit, but they're probably left-wingers too. 64% identified themselves as liberal, 23% as moderate, and only 6% identified as conservative. Here's how they answered the question, who do you think has been the best president in the last 40 years? 26% said Bill Clinton, 17% said John F. Kennedy, 15% said Lyndon Johnson, 13% said Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan came in a poor fifth at 4%. 79% said George W. Bush's political views are too conservative. And 71% disagreed with the statement that news coverage of political and social issues reflects a liberal bias in the news media. The watchwords on college campuses today are diversity, multiculturalism, tolerance, and political correctness. And the campus thought police have defined those words to enforce the left-wing liberal agenda. Diversity means diversity only for thoughts and practices that are politically correct. Political correctness means conformity to left-wing orthodoxy. Multiculturalism means all cultures are equal, but Western Judeo-Christian civilization is the worst. Tolerance means acceptance of all behaviors except those that comport with the Ten Commandments. Now, every year, the Young America's Foundation issues a list of the 10 top campus follies, and its list for last year include the following outrages on college campuses. At Wesleyan University in Connecticut, they established a gender-blind dorm floor, and this is for students who are not sure about which sex they are. Students who request this floor will have roommates assigned without regard to what their sex is. At Citrus College in California, a speech professor forced his students in a required course to write anti-war letters to President Bush, and he penalized those who refused. Students who asked permission to write a friendly letter to George Bush were threatened with lower grades. At Gonzaga University, a flyer advertising a YAF lecture entitled "Why the Left Hates America" was censored because officials said the word hate was discriminatory. At Smith College, the students voted to remove all feminine pronouns from the college's constitution. And then you have the colleges with the speech codes. You know, these are the colleges that never heard of the First Amendment. At the University of Connecticut, the speech code has outlawed inconsiderate jokes, stereotyping, and inappropriately directed laughter. I assume this part of the speech code was instigated by the feminists because, as we all know, they have no sense of humor. At Colby College, they are forbidding speech that causes a vague sense of danger or a loss of self-esteem. At Brown University, they have banned verbal behavior that produces feelings of impotence, anger, or disenfranchisement, whether intentional or unintentional. And at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota, they have banned freedom. They have said that freedom of expression does not include the right to ridicule another person. So now you know we have a new constitutional right, the right not to be offended, not to be insulted, not to have your self-esteem diminished by somebody else's freedom of speech. So you have to be very careful. There are a lot of words you should never mention when you go on college campuses. Political correctness is the prevailing environment on most college campuses, and this applies to faculty bias, to faculty hiring, to course content, to visiting speakers, and to organizations and events that are funded by student fees. Now, I'm going to list for you the principal tenets of political correctness, so you know what this means. This word is bandied around all the time, and you need to know what it means. First, everything is political. All academic subjects must be seen through the prism of gender and race oppression, including history, literature, social relationships, and even private conversation. Everything that happens has to be seen in terms of its political overtone. Second is the theory of victimology. Every group is entitled to claim minority status as victims, except white males and Christians. They are not allowed to be victims. Third, multiculturalism. And again, that is the code word for the false notion that Western civilization is bad and every other group, whether civilized or not, must be superior. Multiculturalism is the only required course at all 16 state universities in New York. When my grandson applied at one of the major universities, one of the questions on his college application was, what multicultural organizations do you belong to? I don't know. I think you all ought to put your church down for a multicultural organization that you belong to. The fourth tenet of political correctness is radical feminism. The entire world must be seen as one giant conspiracy against women, and all men are guilty, both individually and as a group. And joking about this doctrine is not permitted. Most prestigious colleges have more women's studies courses than economics courses. At the University of California at Davis, the law review policy is they must use the female pronoun as a matter of course, except when referring to a criminal defendant. And then you use the male pronoun. At Arizona State University, the drama professor, Jared Sokran, was fired for having his drama class produce Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew. You know, that is not a politically correct play. When I spoke last year at Loyola in New Orleans, the head of the women's studies courses came to the Q&A period, and I asked her what anti-feminist readings they assigned in their women's studies courses, and she just answered none. So much for diversity and academic freedom. One of the principal aspects of feminism on the campus is their use of Title IX. Now, Title IX was an okay law that was passed in 1972. It was called the Education Amendments of 1972. And it simply says that you can't discriminate on account of sex in schools and colleges. And most reasonable people would have thought that just means that everything ought to be open to men and women equally at colleges and universities. But that went into the hands of the feminists, first in the Carter administration and then in the Clinton administration, and they transformed it into a tool against men. What they did was to take a word out of the dictionary called proportionality and use it to impose quotas in order to get rid of the men's teams on the college campuses. And it has been used most viciously for that purpose. Now, this simply proves that the thing has nothing to do with money, because wrestling is probably the cheapest sport you can have. All you need is a mat to wrestle on. But they get rid of it because of their antagonism toward men, and because they have misused this word proportionality to say if a college has 60% women, which is now the national average, then you've got to have 60% women in all of your athletic slots on your college teams. And this is absolutely ridiculous, because women are not anywhere near as interested in participating in sports as men. I did everything to avoid sports when I was in college. Colleges have a lot of what they call re-entry women today, who are women who go back long years after they are thinking about competing on some athletic team, and they are all counted in this proportionality count. So it has been a very unfortunate thing that has happened on college campuses. Well, continuing with the dogmas of political correctness, another one, of course, is affirmative action. And that means affirmative action in admissions, in grading, and in employment for groups that proclaim their status as victims. And not only is it mandatory, it is non-debatable. You can't discuss things like this on the college campuses. The sixth tenet of political correctness is that having sex with anybody, anytime, is okay and may not be criticized. The social acceptance of homosexual behavior and activism is not debatable. Another precept of political correctness is the word tolerance, and that is a code word meaning tolerance for political correct views, but not for politically incorrect views. We know that Christianity is incorrect, and there are many colleges, more all the time, who are forbidding students to turn in papers in identifying dates as BC, as in before Christ, or Anno Domini, as in Year of Our Lord. They must instead use BCE as before the Common Era, and BE as BC as Common Era. Another aspect is the dumbing down of the whole curriculum. The National Association of Scholars, a prestigious group of college professors, published a devastating report after their investigation of the courses that are offered and required at the top 50 undergraduate colleges and universities, both public and private. This society concluded that the universities have simply purged from the curriculum many of the required courses that formerly taught students the historical, cultural, political, and scientific basics of our society. The former universal requirement that students take a basic survey course in several important areas has virtually vanished. The college year has been shortened by about 8 weeks, leaving more time for spring break and other frivolities, but of course without any reduction in tuition price or professors' salaries. When I went to college, we had classes on 195 days a year. Today's students have classes on 156 days per academic year. The number of universities that have traditional math or science requirements, or that require a thesis to graduate, has dropped 2/3. And meanwhile, the total number of courses offered at undergraduate institutions has doubled. Hundreds of courses are given, but this does not mean a better opportunity to become an educated citizen. The majority of these additional courses are on narrow and idiosyncratic subjects of interest to the professors, but almost worthless to the students. And I'll give you some of the titles of some of the courses to which you students should not waste your education dollar on. At the University of California at Berkeley, you can take a course in male sexuality. At Columbia, in sorcery and magic. At Harvard, on feminist biblical interpretation. At Yale, on AIDS and society. At Princeton, on sexuality, bodies, desires, and modern times. At the University of Pennsylvania, feminist critique of Christianity. At Brown, Unnatural Acts, Introduction to Lesbian and Gay Literature. At the University of Indiana, Star Trek and Religion. Now, be careful. I mean, don't spend your expensive tuition dollar on any of those courses. They're determined to impose the new political correctness. And a lot of these courses are not education by any standard. They are just propaganda, entertainment, and behavior modification. You're paying these high-priced professors to teach these worthless courses. Part of that $36,000 tuition is paying the salary of Professor Peter Singer, professor of bioethics. He teaches that the only reason we value life is the pleasure it brings. If cows lead pleasurable lives, don't butcher them. If handicapped lives are not pleasurable, kill the people. Who decides? Enlightened people like himself. We are losing the national cohesion of a known and shared heritage that has sustained us through the generation. Now, I have some survival advice for the young people in the room when you go. First, pick your courses carefully. Second, don't think that the title of the course is a guarantee of what the course really covers. Get a syllabus to find out if the course has been politicized. Third, take courses where you learn things that are true, not things that are false that you have to unlearn later. So you can take engineering, math, accounting, statistics, and the classics. Fourth, avoid taking advice from college counselors. Your degree is not worth a penny more if it takes you 5 years or 6 years to get it. And there's no excuse for taking that long. 5, make sure you don't get trapped in a course that's taught by an instructor who does not speak intelligible English. 6, if you take economics, seek out the professors who teach the successful free market economics according to Adam Smith or Milton Friedman. Try to avoid professors who teach the failed economics of socialism. 7th, beware of professors of English who teach deconstructionism. That is a very trendy fad in the English departments. That means there's no such thing as a classic. What really matters is what you think the author said, not what he actually wrote. 8th, of course, avoid women's studies. 9th, seek out courses that teach the true history and achievements of Western civilization. 10th, don't believe everything you read in the college catalog. 11th, take courses that are taught by qualified professors rather than by teaching assistants, known as TAs. 12th, beware of crime on campus. 13, prepare yourself morally and psychologically for the culture shock. 14th, don't think you can get into a first-rate college just because you are smart. 15, avoid the more than 300 colleges that have speech codes. 16th, don't think you are getting a good education just because you get high grades. 17th, seek out companions who share your values and beliefs. Well, there's one other aspect of college campuses, and that is the student activities and what's going on the college campus with your student activity money. And I do believe that the best thing that a normal college student can do is to join a support group so you will have some reinforcement for your views and some way to associate socially with people who have your same values. It's really tough going to college these days. You can go and survive, and all my children survived as conservatives, so it is possible to do it. But you have to know what the battle is out there before you go.